Hello, my name's Peter. I'd like to tell you a little bit about PJD Web Design and a bit about the stuff that we can do for you. Firstly, maybe you've been wondering why on earth you should even bother getting a website. Well, there's several reasons why you should, very few reasons why you shouldn't. Do you know, back in the 70s and the 80s, it could be said if you didn't have a business card, you pretty much didn't have a business. And that is the way people look at the internet today. If you don't have a website, you haven't really got a business. So, let's take a look at some of the reasons I think you should have a website. The importance of a website, we'll actually start with that. Now, loads and loads of people these days use their computers, their tablets and their smartphones to look at anything that they're perhaps interested in buying at some point. They'll research the product, they'll research even the companies that make the product, and they'll look for retailers that will actually sell the product. And that is really where a website scores over pretty much anything else. You know something, if you haven't got a website, you are definitely missing out on that potential business. And many of your competitors probably already have a website, so they could well be ahead of the game. The point is, if they haven't, and you do get a website, that will put you ahead of the game. You will be the leader in whatever it is you do. Right, a website. The first thing we can say about a website is it gives you free advertising. Now, you know that advertising isn't cheap. You know, you put an advert in your local paper, and it costs you can run into quite big money. And of course it only lasts for a few days or however long you tell that newspaper or magazine to run it for. The longer you run it, obviously the more expensive it gets. A website will increase your customer reach. You're not limited to just your local area and people that already know you. People looking for what you do will find you wherever they are. It doesn't really matter where you are. The information you have on a website is way more superior than in any brochure or pamphlet that you actually release. And every time you get a new product or you need to change the price of a product, you run into issues with what you've already had printed, again, at a lot of cost. Up-to-date info is something else that you'll find on a website. If you own a website, you keep it all up to date, and then anybody looking for any product or services that you provide are going to get that up-to-date information. They're not going to be looking in the yellow pages at last year's advert. They'll find out what the reality is, what the cost is, and how they can get it now. Biggest advantage, of course, is you're open 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. It doesn't matter whether it's Christmas Day or some bank or public holiday. Your shop is open because your website is. Your website can take the orders that could be sent through to your office or wherever it is you work, even to your smartphone. You could get an order come through at any time and you can process it there and then, or wait till you get back into the office on the following working day. Printing costs. These can get very expensive, as I'm sure you know. A website doesn't have to be printed. A website just needs to be up to date. And that is the key thing with a website. It's information, it's there, it's now, and it's relevant. So what's actually involved is keeping it up to date. Well, you can do that yourself or your web design company, hopefully PJD Web Design, We'll do that for you, and we'll do that using a very good SEO strategy. Right, so what is it you need to get started in having a website if you haven't already got one? Well, you need to know what your goals are. What is it you want the website to do? Because once we know that, we can work towards getting those particular goals achieved. So planning. You need to plan exactly what it is on your website. You can provide us with information, text, graphical information. That doesn't really matter what the content is. We'll sort the content out for you as far as SEO goes, and as far as making any images load onto somebody's browser, smartphone, tablet, desktop, making that load faster. You'll need a domain name. You may have heard of these referred to as a URL, it's a Uniform Resource Locator, or a URI, which is a Uniform Resource Indicator. Either way, your domain name is what's your website called, www.whatever. They range in price, and this is something that we can arrange and sort out for you anyway. They're not that expensive. Next, you will need a web hosting account. This can best be explained is, if you know that the internet is pretty much at the end of the day a collection of computers, each one connected to each other, and then each network connects to another, to another, to another, and so on and so forth. Well, a web hosting account gives you an amount of room on a computer that is never turned off. It is permanently on, and therefore serving your website visitors. When they look for something, your web hosting account is your server that will provide that information, whether your computer is on or off. Right, so the web hosting account is where the actual site is going to be located on the internet. We can sort that out for you too. So why PJD Web Design? We work differently to a lot of people. You can look at us as like having extra employees in your business. We work tirelessly just to get your website up and running, because we're not successful unless you're successful. If you don't do well, we don't do well. So it's in our interest to make sure you get the absolute best from your website. And you'll find your team member will be exactly that. They'll live and breathe it. Anything goes wrong, it will be dealt with as soon as earthly possible. Right, so we'll help you plan your website, get your content ready and stuff like that. We will also get you your domain name, your URL. We'll get you your hosting account so that you've got your permanent space on the internet. And then we will design your website. We'll design your website so that it's accessible on any screen size. We call those responsive designs. And Google in April last year released another part of its algorithm where it gives more credibility. You'll get higher up the search engines if your site is responsive. Apart from that, it needs to be good content and stuff like that, but we'll handle all that for you. So we'll code your website, which is, like I've said, is going to be mobile friendly. So whether you look at it on a desktop, a smartphone, a tablet, anything, it should look either the same or very, very similar. We'll optimize all of your images for speed. Sometimes when you take a picture with a camera, you get a very big image. People that are using smartphones particularly, they might have issues with the amount of data that they can use and download. So we'll optimize those by making sure that they're small files but good quality files and good images that people see. And we'll publish your website. We'll take your design and coding from our computer and we'll put it onto your web hosting where it could be served to the rest of the world. And then we will go ahead and make sure Google knows about you, that Bing knows about you, Yahoo knows about you, and Ask, all of those, loads of the major search engines. We'll make sure that you get listed on and you can be found. We'll perform all the necessary SEO that's required to get you as high up the listings as is earthly possible. If anybody promises you the #1 slot, they don't know the first thing about SEO. I could say something to you now, which this time tomorrow could be different. SEO is an ongoing process, something that you need to stay on top of. Well, you don't. We will, as your web design company of choice. We'll set up Google Analytics, which will basically help us and our other analytics software to see exactly how your website's doing in terms of its visitors, in terms of people contacting you, in terms of how many times you're found, what words you're found for that people type into Google. All that can be handled directly by us. So please get in touch, and I'll tell you even more about it. We're not into high pressure sales. When you're ready, we will talk.